The taxman taketh less a new era. Welcome to a new chapter in American history. In December 2017, President Trump signed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, a landmark piece of legislation that promised to reshape the financial landscape of the nation. This law brought big changes to the US tax system, aiming to simplify the tax code and reduce the burden on both individuals and businesses. One of its main goals was to put more money in the pockets of everyday Americans, but did it work? Let's break it down. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was designed to benefit the middle class, but its impact has been a topic of much debate. We'll look at how these tax cuts affected the middle class, from their paychecks to the overall economy. Did families really see an increase in their disposable income? How did these changes influence their spending habits and financial security? This isn't about boring numbers, it's about understanding the real-world implications of these tax changes. This is about your life, your money, and your future. How did the tax cuts affect your ability to save for college, buy a home, or plan for retirement? So buckle up, America, because we're diving into the world of Trump's tax cuts. We'll explore the promises made, the outcomes achieved, and what it all means for you and your family. Stay tuned as we unravel the complexities of this significant legislative change and its lasting impact on the American dream. If you find this information helpful, please subscribe, share, comment, and like this video. Your support helps us bring you more insightful content. Thank you. America's wallet before Trump's touch. Before Trump's tax cuts, the US tax system was like a giant, complicated machine. It was a labyrinth of rules and regulations that many found difficult to navigate. There were 7 different tax brackets ranging from 10% to 39.6%. Each bracket represented a different level of income, and the more you earned, the higher your tax rate. The more you earned, the higher your tax rate. This progressive system was designed to ensure that those with greater financial resources contributed more to the nation's coffers. This system aimed to make things fairer, ensuring the wealthy paid a larger share of their income in taxes. The idea was to redistribute wealth and provide funding for public services and infrastructure. But critics argued this system was too complex. They pointed out that the intricate web of tax laws and regulations made it difficult for the average person to understand their tax obligations. They said it discouraged investment and economic growth. High tax rates, they argued, stifled innovation and deterred entrepreneurs from taking risks. Businesses and individuals complained about the high rates and the headache of navigating the tax code. Many felt that the system was burdensome and unfair, particularly to small businesses and middle-class families. Enter Trump, promising to simplify the system and give Americans a much-needed tax break. His campaign was built on the promise of reducing taxes and making the tax code more straightforward. He vowed to cut through the red tape and deliver a tax system that was easier to understand and more beneficial to the average American. His vision was to create a more dynamic economy by putting more money back into the pockets of individuals and businesses. Supporters believed that these changes would lead to increased consumer spending, job creation, and overall economic growth. They saw Trump's tax plan as a way to unleash the full potential of the American economy. However, not everyone was convinced. Critics warned that the proposed tax cuts would disproportionately benefit the wealthy and increase the national deficit. They argued that the promised economic benefits were uncertain and that the risks were too high. The debate over Trump's tax plan was intense, with strong opinions on both sides. It was a pivotal moment in American economic policy, one that would have lasting implications for the nation's financial future. As the nation awaited the outcome, one thing was clear. The American tax system was on the brink of significant change, and the impact of Trump's touch would be felt for years to come. Why the tax cut tango? Trump and his supporters argued that the American economy needed a jumpstart. They believed that high taxes were holding back businesses and individuals. Their solution? A massive tax cut, primarily benefiting businesses and wealthy individuals. The idea was simple. Lower taxes would lead to more money for businesses to invest and hire. This in turn would boost the economy, create jobs, and ultimately benefit everyone, including the middle class. It was a classic trickle-down economics approach, but would it work as planned? The middle class winners or weenies? The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act lowered tax rates for most Americans. The standard deduction, the amount you can deduct from your income before calculating your taxes, nearly doubled. This meant that many middle-class families paid less in taxes. However, the benefits weren't evenly distributed. While most middle-class taxpayers saw some tax relief, the wealthy saw much larger cuts. This led to criticism that the tax cuts primarily benefited the rich while doing little to help the middle class. Section 5. Tax relief, real people, real stories. Meet Sarah, a single mother working as a nurse in Ohio. Every day she juggles the demands of her job with the responsibilities of raising her children. It's a tough balancing act, but Sarah is determined to provide the best life she can for her kids. Thanks to the tax cuts, Sarah received a $1,200 tax refund this year. This unexpected windfall was a welcome relief for her. It meant she could finally address some pressing financial issues that had been weighing on her mind. That extra money helped her pay off some credit card debt and buy new school clothes for her kids. With the new school year approaching, Sarah was worried about how she would afford everything her children needed. The tax refund came just in time to ease those concerns. For Sarah, the tax cuts provided some much-needed financial breathing room. It allowed her to focus more on her family and less on her financial struggles. She could spend more quality time with her children, knowing that some of her financial burdens had been lifted. But then there's John, a teacher in California. John has been teaching for over a decade and is passionate about his work. He loves inspiring young minds and making a difference in his students' lives. While John also received a tax cut, it was significantly smaller than Sarah's. Despite his dedication to his profession, the financial benefits he received from the tax cuts were minimal. John's income is higher, so he benefited less from the changes to the standard deduction. This left him feeling frustrated and somewhat overlooked by the new tax policies. John feels like the tax cuts didn't do much to help him and his family. He still faces the same financial challenges and worries about the future. The disparity in the benefits received by different individuals highlights the complexities and varied impacts of tax policies on real people. Section 6, The Rich Get Richer, examining the impact. One of the biggest criticisms of the tax cuts was that they disproportionately benefited the wealthy. The top 1% of earners received an average tax cut of over $50,000, while the bottom 20% saw an average cut of just over $400. Critics argued that this exacerbated income inequality, putting more money in the hands of those who needed it least. They pointed out that the wealthy were more likely to save or invest their tax savings rather than spend it, limiting the stimulative effect on the economy. Section 7. The tax cut critics, their 2 cents. Opponents of the tax cuts argued that they were fiscally irresponsible, adding trillions of dollars to the national debt. They also criticized the cuts for being permanent for corporations, while those for individuals were set to expire after 2025. Critics argued that the tax cuts were a missed opportunity to invest in education, infrastructure, or other programs that could benefit a wider range of Americans. They predicted that the cuts would lead to cuts in social programs and a weaker safety net for the most vulnerable. Section 8. The economy's roller coaster. Did tax cuts help? The tax cuts were enacted during a period of economic growth. The unemployment rate was low and the stock market was booming. Proponents of the tax cuts argued that they contributed to this economic expansion. However, critics argued that the economic growth was already underway before the tax cuts were implemented. They pointed out that wages remained stagnant for many Americans despite the tax cuts. The debate over the impact of the tax cuts on the economy continues. Section 9. The long game lasting effects on the middle class. The long-term effects of Trump's tax cuts on the middle class are still being debated. Some argue that the cuts will lead to greater economic growth and higher wages in the long run. Others fear that the cuts will primarily benefit the wealthy while leaving the middle class with a larger share of the national debt. Only time will tell what the true legacy of Trump's tax cuts will be. However, one thing is certain: the debate over taxes and their impact on the middle class is far from over. Section 10. The bottom line, Trump's tax cuts and you. Trump's tax cuts were a complex and controversial piece of legislation. While they did provide some tax relief for many middle-class Americans, the benefits were not evenly distributed. The wealthy saw much larger cuts, leading to criticism that the cuts primarily benefited the rich. The long-term impact of the tax cuts on the middle class remains to be seen. However, understanding the basics of these tax cuts and their potential consequences is crucial for all Americans.